Hello everyone, welcome to another short video. In this video, we are going to talk about, settings required to do automatic failover between the firewalls of the Palo Alto when they are deployed in active passive high availability. In the last video, we saw how to trigger a manual failover, by going to the operational commands and then suspend the local device for the high availability. But that's not really what happens when you have firewalls running in production environments. They should do this job automatically. They should fail over automatically based on certain conditions being met for them. Now, um, let's see how to configure that. So if you go into the device tab and under the high availability, there are settings for the link and path monitoring. So we can monitor Palo Alto interfaces in case if any or all interfaces of a group fails, the failover should happen. So you can see link monitoring. First of all, it should be enabled. Failure condition any link group. And then within the group, how many interfaces should fail? One or all? That's set to any in my case. In order to add a link group, you can click on add, give it a name, and then select the interfaces. Then all the interfaces in a group must fail, or any of them must fail. For in order to trigger a failover, you can select that option by selecting any or all. I have created this interface monitor, selected all three interfaces. Two of them goes towards my LAN side with the LSCP running on the switch and bundled in an aggregate interface, and this is my WAN interface. So I am monitoring all the interfaces. Any of them goes down, trigger a failover. Another thing, suppose interface is going down, might be a good idea to failover. Yeah, it is a good idea without a doubt. But next thing is, suppose my interfaces don't go down, but my internet is not working. Okay, suppose your internet suppose something which is after your Palo Alto firewall interface is, you know, towards the path to the internet or towards the path to the LAN has broken. In that case, your Palo Alto will stay up if you only do the link monitoring. So for such situations, we can do path monitoring. I can say my Palo Alto, keep on pinging to Google or maybe the any other DNS IP address on the internet, or maybe a specific IP address of my organization which sits on the internet controlled by me. Ping this IP address. If it is reachable, it's fine. If you cannot reach to it, irrespective of links going down or not, you do fail over to the other passive unit. So doing that, you can set up the path monitoring. So I've created a path group. There are certain kind of path groups you can create. Add a vWire path group, add a VLAN path group, or you can then add a virtual router path group. I have added a virtual router path group. I do not have any VLAN interface, so cannot really create a VLAN path. I have not deployed my firewall in the vWire mode, so I won't be able to use this one. And yeah, I can only use the virtual router path because I have deployed my firewall as a layer 3 box. So I clicked on this add virtual router path and this box will come up. And then I said, okay, select the default router. I selected the default is the default router. I have only one VR. That's my default. Enabled failure condition. Any of the destination IP groups are, if fail, ping interval MS, send only 200 milliseconds, send every 200 milliseconds, 10 pings, and then ping to Google DNS and Cloudflare DNS, both the IPs, and it's enabled. And any of them fails, this entire group will be marked as failed. Now, this is how you can monitor the links and the paths in order to trigger the failover on your Palo Alto firewall. Other thing is we have deployed our fire into just give me a second. We have deployed our Palo Alto firewall into active passive mode. There is another mode of deployment which is active active. So let's have some talk about the active active deployment as well. In active active deployment, if you are thinking, you are gonna have double the capacity and while both the Unix work simultaneously, no, that's not how it works in Palo Alto. You are still gonna get the same throughput as you get with the one unit. And also, please remember, active active is not the recommended deployment of from Palo Alto until or unless you really need it because it makes things complex. The thing is, active active. really goes at the places where you have asymmetric routing and you don't want to tackle the routing, you know, and you want to tackle it at the firewall end, then you can go for active-active. Other thing is, in terms of active-active, you have you have a firewall that really that gets known as session owner, other gets known as session setup, and let's talk about both of these roles in case of these two firewalls are active-active. But before that, let's talk about something else as well. The thing is, when these firewalls are running in active-active, some of the jobs are done by one firewall and some of the jobs are done by other firewall. So there are two roles, session owner and session setup. What session owner does, it handles the first packet. Okay, it handles the first packet and it also does the entire layer 7 inspection of that specific session. And what the session setup firewall what this session setup firewall will really do is it's going to do the layer 2 to layer 4 job for that specific session. Okay, it's not going to do the layer 7 inspection. So every session will have two firewalls. One is session owner, other is session setup, but these two can be same. Okay, the same firewall can be session setup and session owner for this specific session. That will exactly be having like one active firewall for that specific session. But here, if you have two, then you can utilize some of the processing power of the other unit in order to basically active is really the load sharing. Both of the firewalls work, but one works as a session owner and other works as a session setup. That should be the goal. But if you put the both of the jobs to one firewall in the active active scenario, then you're not really using the active. So there are several ways, several configurations. One thing is a concept of the floating IP, and other is a concept of the basically the R-based, uh, uh, I would say R-based mechanism to work in the active scenario. The floating IP is each of the firewalls have a different IP address. Other than that, they do get two more IP addresses, and in case of one firewall going down in active, its floating IP moves to the other box. So in case of floating IP, how we manage the load balancing is half of the clients in my LAN side is given one firewall as the gateway, and half of the client gets the other firewall as the gateway. So it's like if you worked in Cisco's HSRP configuration where you created two groups, and one half of the clients have the gateway as the first HSRP group as the gateway, and the half of them has the other HSRP group as the gateway. Similarly, like that, in the comparison, but not really similar to that in the Palo Alto terms. Now, you do have ARP-based stuff. In ARP-based stuff, what really happens is the firewall responds with the MAC address of the firewall, but based on the hash calculated for the source IP address. So suppose one source IP gets other firewall as the gateway, and other source IP gets other firewall as the gateway for them. So that's how it's basically automatic, and that half one will really work when you have a layer 2 device between Palo Alto and the clients on the LAN or the WAN side. If you don't have any uh, layer 2 device and you really have a layer 3 device, then it's not going to work. Then you have to use that session stuff. Also, we need to use more links in order to achieve that active. There will be one more HA link will be required, which will work as HA3, which will be used to communication between the session I would say session owner and the session setup firewall. So they will communicate through that link in order to communicate to themselves about the information they computed for that specific session, like layer 2 to layer sorry uh, some what is the job of the session setup box. It will communicate its results for that job to the session owner firewall, and then things will be done accordingly. So that is about a lot of theory about the active as well. And we will look at the active, but it's not really the recommended stuff from the firewall if you do not have a requirement, because it makes things very complex. You need to tackle the NAT stuff uh, as well for that, because of the method you use. Basically, if you are using floating IP, then you have to be very careful of what you deploy and where you put it at. So that's it about that was this This video was more of a theoretical video to show you, how you can trigger the automatic failover over the Palo Altos and what is really active. And we looked at, session owner and session setup firewall. You can read more about them in the Palo Alto tech docs. They are pretty good written. And along with that, we also discussed one more thing, the floating IP and the ARP-based, load balancing in the active setup. And active is not really having two firewalls, you double your capacity. No, you just get the throughput, yes, for the one firewall only. And that's how it is in Palo Alto. Thank you for your time. I'll catch up with you in the another video where we will discuss on the active lab demo. Thank you. Have a good day.